Hello there. Good afternoon. I meant to get online yesterday and do the live stream, and it didn't happen. It just kind of snuck away from me. It wasn't really any one thing I was busy doing. It's just one of those days where I lost track of time and just really wasn't paying attention. Oh well, that's the nice thing about live streaming like this is I can do it when I want, how I feel like doing it, and so on. Uh, but it is what it is. So it was kind of fun. 2 days ago, had a priest friend of mine come up and visit for the evening. One problem with living in rural Montana is it's a long drive to anywhere, especially to visit friends. So it was nice that he wanted to get out of his town where he lives and for his day off. So he came up here and we had a good time. We're both Magic the Gathering players, so we spent the evening playing that and had a lot of fun and a lot of laughs and a few beverages. And of course, we went out to supper when he first got here. Had a good dinner over at the local steakhouse and just had a good time together. And it's always fun when we can get together and hang out. And it's also a time for us to discuss things going on in the diocese, issues for us as priests, to support each other. And that's a big thing, I think, especially my brother priests and I need are just time to support each other. We need that fellowship. We need that, we call it fraternity. That time where we can get together as priests to share with one another, to talk, to laugh, to have fun. And it doesn't have to be all serious. Yes, we take time for retreat. One thing we've been very conscious about trying to get going here is a monthly retreat on Mondays, on once a month on Mondays, on a Monday. And it's a wonderful thing for us to be able to get together and just pray, celebrate the mass, receive the sacrament of confession. Of course, that's one thing as priests, we can't go to the parish and receive confession. We can't go look in the mirror and say, I absolve myself. It doesn't work that way. We have to go to another priest. And so it's much more convenient when we can do it with our priest friends where we're together at that time and we can kind of grab each other throughout the day and say, hey, can you carry my confession? I carry my confession stole, my purple stole with me. And so it's usually kind of like, can I borrow you for a minute? And I'll hold up the stole. And of course, we know that symbol. We know what that means. I need confession. And it's a good opportunity for us to do that. We try as priests to receive it at least every other week. It's harder here. We recently read some writings, some meditations from the 30s. It was a priest wrote this in the 30s, and he recommended that priests get together at least once a week, especially to receive the sacrament of confession, but also to get together for fellowship. And that's something we would love to do. But again, when you're this particular priest is over 100 miles away, it's not easy for us to get together as we would like. So it was good for us to be able to do that. And I haven't been as conscious about just going and saying, hey, I'm going to go to Great Falls and visit a priest friend there. I'm going to go to Billings and visit a priest friend in that area. I'm going to go to where this other priest is. And, I haven't been as conscious about doing that as I probably should. And sometimes it is because of the fact that you're talking 2 to 3 hour drive each way. It's not something you can do on an easy task, but it's something I should still make a conscious effort to do. So it was fun to get together with him and just again to enjoy the time together and stay up way too late having fun. And again, all these other things that go into our time together. So I always enjoy that very much and need to do that more. And it was kind of a relief because I had a little bit of an oops on Saturday. And this is where I've got to, mea culpa. I'm not always the best driver or the most obvious or conscious driver as I should be. I was out around town and I pulled into a parking lot, and the only spot that happened to be available at that time was right next to a light pole. I didn't think anything of it. I've parked in this parking lot before. It's not a big deal. Except when I got back into the car and went to back out, well, the cars next to me were gone. So I thought, okay, fine. Well, I'll just do a quick swing and I can pull out real quick. I forgot about the light pole. And I cranked the wheel and started to back up, and all of a sudden, that feeling we all know when you hit something, all of a sudden your car just stops. And yeah, I wasn't very happy with myself that day, but I got out and I looked at the car and it didn't look like I'd done any damage. The body was straight. Wheel felt fine for turning and everything. So I figured what I did is I had just bumped it with my tire and hadn't done any damage. No harm, no foul, right? So I get the car home. I'm so upset with myself. I'm not even just thinking about what's going on with the car. I'm just like, I got to get home and just be done with this. Sunday, I get in the car and I start driving, and I notice the steering wheel is tilted to the right. It's probably going to look, to my right. About 5 degrees, 10 degrees. Oh shoot, and of course, I'm driving straight, but the wheel's tilted. Okay, so I did more than I thought, and well, maybe it's just out of alignment. I was hoping that's best case scenario. Alignments are cheap, they're easy, they're quick. Now, get the car into the shop today. This was the first day they could look at it. And no, it's not out of alignment. It's the lower control arm is bent a little bit, just enough that it can't be realigned. Supposedly, that's what they said, and they said they don't have the parts or the tools to fix it. Unfortunately, it's a tire shop, so I didn't know if they should or not, but they said they can't, and they said it probably needs to go to a manufacturer or to the dealership. So I get to look forward to taking my car to the dealership, and that makes it much more expensive. I am going to talk to the other repair shop here in town. There's two major repair shops here in town. Talk to the other repair shop and see what they can say. This is just bonehead move on my part. I'm hoping they can fix it because, YouTube, of course, knows everything. That's why I'm on YouTube, because I know everything. And hopefully it looks like it's not that bad of a repair job, especially if you've got a lift where you can actually get underneath the car. If I tried to replace it here, I think it would be impossible, just because of the amount of reaching and everything you got to do underneath there to try to do it when I don't have a lift. I've got a couple of jack stands. I've got one of those crawlers we can roll underneath the car, but that won't happen. I won't be able to fix it here. So I've got to try to get it fixed somewhere else, apparently. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens with that. I got to get it fixed eventually. The car seems drivable. The steering feels fine. It's just off center. The wheel is off centered, which means the car is out of alignment, which means the tires could get damaged. But we'll have to see what happens beyond that. It's not something I don't think I'm going to be able to get fixed before Thanksgiving anyways, because of course that's tomorrow. And happy Thanksgiving to everyone watching. I'll try to get on at some point tomorrow morning just to say hi and happy Thanksgiving. But, this happens. We all make dumb decisions. We all do things that we're distracted or not paying attention or whatever the reason is, and live and let learn. I've been driving for a long time. I'm not quite 30 years, but getting close. And I've been very good about not damaging my vehicles. So even this relatively minor damage, which again, watching that video on YouTube doesn't look like it's going to take long to get it fixed. Once I can get it someplace to get it fixed, it's just, they get the part in, they replace it and they send it back. It doesn't look like it's a huge major thing, but you never know either though. So it is what it is. Like I said, I think the car is drivable. I don't think, other than wearing out the tires odd, I don't think I'm going to do too much to the car by driving it. Hopefully I'm going to try to limit the amount of driving I'm going to do. I do have my charger. However, there are some issues. There's something coming up that's going to make the charger not a reliable option. My charger, of course, is my second car, my older car. That's kind of a little more my fun car. It's also a good backup car because it's been extremely reliable. It's 11 years old, and I've had absolutely zero issues with that car. It still has the stock battery, the original battery from when the car was built. I mean, that's pretty incredible. So it is what it is. Like I said, we make mistakes, and that was my bonehead move of the month. I hope only one this month. So I got that looked at anyways today. So that's good to know where it sits. As I said, there's an issue coming up that's going to make the charger not so reliable. And we've got a snowstorm coming. And I'll talk more about that later, probably on Monday, especially, or Friday, if I get on Friday, because that's when the storm's supposed to hit the worst. Today, we've got a little bit of flurries, and it's overcast, and it's kind of dark outside. So there's plenty of clouds, but we're supposed to get a little bit of snow tonight, a little bit of snow tomorrow. And then Friday, a second set of storms are supposed to come in. And that's where the big weather is going to hit. Anywhere from, every forecast I've seen so far has said 6 inches to upwards of a foot of snow. And some of the forecasts, the weather service does like this, nice map where it shows this area is going to get this percentage, and this area is, or this amount of snow, and this area is going to get this amount of snow. 1 to 2 and 2 to 4 and 4 to 8. On and down the list. And we were in the 6 inch to a foot range. And when they first published this map, we were on the outside edge of it, so we were closer to the 6 inch line. If you can imagine that, it's probably a gradient from the 6 inch line to the foot line. We were closer to the 6 inch line. Well, this morning they published one where we're just right off of the foot line. So odds are pretty good. And of course, this is a storm, so it's going to be, weather doesn't fall in these nice even bands like that. We could get a foot of snow here, and you go 2 miles outside of town, and they could have 6 inches. So that's just how weather works. But we're closer to that foot line now, and it's possible, if it keeps going that trend, that we could actually be over the foot line, which means that it's very likely we're going to get a foot or more. So that might affect my weekend driving as far as going to masses and so on, because if it snows upwards of a foot by Saturday night, Sunday morning, I might not be going anywhere on Sunday morning because I don't want to have to fight the road. So we'll see what happens there. We'll talk more. I'll definitely be talking about this over the next couple of days, because we're going to be watching it very closely here. Getting out on the road when there's that much snow on the ground, or snow that could be blowing and drifting and ice, and not a good thing. And so I want to be very careful about that. And, because we got to be safe out here. When you're out in the middle of Montana, there's not much between towns, and the roads can get very dangerous very quickly. And those of you who live in higher climes, northern climates, this. Those of you in Canada, those of you in northern United States, you understand this. When the weather's bad, sometimes the best thing you can do is make up a pot of coffee, find a good book, and stay home. Hopefully I can do that if necessary. That there won't be any kind of emergencies or anything like that. So, but right now the weather's kind of cool. It's kind of windy. It's 25 degrees is what I've got a temperature, like a little weather station up here. That's what I look at. It's got the wind thing and all that. It's showing 9 miles an hour, 10 miles an hour winds upwards, and about 25 degrees. So it's a little brisk out there right now, but not too bad yet. So we're happy about that. I might go to grocery store here a little bit and kind of stock up on some supplies, so that if the weather does get bad after Thanksgiving, I'll be fine. I obviously won't starve, but I've got plenty of food around the house. But of course, the concern is if the power goes out or something like that. Cross that bridge when we get there, if necessary. So anyways, just a little quick check-in for the week. It's been a good week. There's one thing I did want to kind of mention from today's reading. So today's first reading was the king of the king who did his so Nebuchadnezzar had captured Jerusalem and taken all the vessels from the temple, and then his son had Belshazzar, I believe it is. I can't remember the king's name, but took the vessels and started using them for a party. Basically, they were getting drunk, and so he had his attendants go and get all these vessels. You figure the chalices and the bowls for the blood and all that. The bowls that they would use for the worship of God at the temple. And they started drinking from him. And so he got told that his life was forfeit, basically, for doing this, for abusing these holy things for profane purposes. And my homily today was pretty much, that needs to be a reminder for us that things that we have dedicated for the use of the Mass, for the use of the worship of God, and not just the Mass, but anything that we use for holy purposes. So, for example, a rosary. The example I gave is a rosary. There was a time when people would take rosaries and wear them as decoration, like you saw Madonna do it back in the 80s, because, of course, she was being edgy and she was being Madonna. She's got, look at me, I'm just this bad Catholic girl. But that became kind of a popular trend for a while. And That's not what we should use rosaries for. They should never be used in that way. Now, it's one thing if, and I've known someone who has to do this for a reason or another, where they actually would wear the rosary around their neck, or they would carry the rosary around their neck is probably a better way of putting it, because maybe they didn't have pockets that they could put it in or something like that. There was a legitimate reason why they did this, or mobility issues or something like that, where it was easier for them to put it around their neck to then remove and use and to carry with them at all times. That's a very different thing. It's something, though, if it's being done as jewelry, as decoration. The rosary is a holy thing. We need to respect it and not use it as just merely decoration. In the same way, how we treat our sacred places, like our churches, to recognize that these are places that are set aside for God. And so many of the things that we see happening disrespects that when we have unholy things put in there. Just one example from here. When I first got here, kind of the standard practice at funerals is to do the night before, do a rosary and a wake. And we still kind of do that. We'll still get together and we'll pray the rosary, and then people will be invited to get up and give, to talk and kind of tell about the person and so on. When I first got here, it was being done over in the church, which praying the rosary for the person who died in the church, not a big deal. That's a good thing. That's a wonderful thing. The body would be there and things like that. And the problem was the wake would also be held at the same time in the church, not even in the parish hall, not in another place on campus, in the church itself. And very quickly we start to hear stories that were really not appropriate in front of the Blessed Sacrament. And I don't even mean stories that were profane, stories that were vulgar, stories that were whatever, sexually explicit or anything like that. Just not wholly appropriate things that were best told elsewhere. So I made the decision very early on. The practice we do to this day is that the rosary is held at the chapel in the funeral home. Our local funeral home has a chapel that's actually just a little smaller than our church. Not by much, though. I think it actually can seat very similar numbers, if not more, because he's got one side that he can open up if he needs more space. But the chapel itself is really not that much smaller than our church. So we do the rosary over there, and then people can stay there because that's more of a non-denominational. It's not a consecrated space as our church is. Our church has been set aside explicitly for the worship of God, and we need to respect that. So we need to remember that when we go to church, that building we are going to has been set aside for the worship of God. It is holy. It is something that needs to be respected. The same thing with the vessels. I think all too often, because we're so familiar with the vessels, especially those of us who, as priests, deacons who serve at Mass, altar servers, sacristans, the lectors when it comes to the books, the lectionaries, and so on, we become so familiar with them that we don't recognize them for the holy things that they are, and that they need to be treated with respect. No, we don't worship them. No, we don't need to pull out the white gloves and all that kind of stuff. We can touch them, but we still need to recognize that this is a holy object which is used for the worship of God and needs to be treated with the respect commiserate with that. Again, that's something I think we've forgotten, and I hate to say it, has even been discouraged in recent years, recent decades, let's say. There have been priests and religious and so on, those working in the church, who have actually discouraged treating things with respect. And it doesn't help much either when we get things like vestments and chalices and ciboriums and things like that, that they're really not, there's nothing special about them. They're very plain. They're, I hate to say it, in some cases, ugly. They're unattractive. They're not things that we look at and say, this is something that is different. Oops, sorry, I think I probably just popped that on the mic. I'd hit my stand. This is something that is different than what we see and use in our daily lives. A chalice should not look like a common cup. This should not be a chalice. Obviously, this wouldn't be. But, a chalice shouldn't look like a common coffee mug or wine glass. And obviously, I think if you've been Catholic for more than about 10, 15 years, you've probably seen the wine glass chalices where they literally look like just heavier duty wine glasses like you might have in your house. We shouldn't be doing that. They should be things that look different, that feel different, that are different. They're made out of different metals, different materials. They're something that we can see is special because they are objects that have been dedicated for God. So that's in when someone would accuse, unfortunately, older priests and older parishioners especially will do this. When a younger priest comes into a parish and maybe has nicer vestments, nicer chalice, nicer mass accoutrements, if you want to use the term, everything that the priest has is a little bit higher standard, shall we say. It might not be, lace and gold trim on the vestments and, this, precious stones in the chalice and things like, but things that they're just a little bit higher quality, a little bit nicer, a little more elaborate. The priest will get denigrated. The priest will get insulted. And I wish these people would understand we recognize that these are objects that are not common objects. They are not to be treated like common objects, and they should not look like the common objects because they are for the worship of God. And they should, by their beauty, and that's the beauty of, again, nicer vestments with nicer material, nicer chalices, nice, a little bit more elaborate chalices and things like that, should lead our minds and hearts to God. That God is worth getting something that's better than just a common wine glass or just a piece of, a cup made out of metal. I've seen, I'm sure people have seen those like those pewter cups that they really look no different than something you might see at someone's house, but yet they're used as chalices. And I don't think that's appropriate at all, unless there's a legitimate reason where this is an extremely poor area where that really is all they can afford. What ironically is historically, those are the kind of places where the parishioners would pay to make sure, they would sacrifice to make sure that the church had the nicer vestments, the nicer chalices, and so on, even as they themselves are suffering. And it's almost a insult to them when a priest would come in and say, oh, we can't use these nicer things. We need to use the clay cups, which, by the way, is not permitted and has never been permitted. Those clay chalices, those clay patens were never, ever, ever authorized. Glass patens, glass chalices were never, ever authorized for use at Mass. It must always be some form of precious metal. I mean, that precious metal doesn't need to be solid gold with jewel stones. But there's other things that can be done that are still a semi-precious metal. So anyways, next time you go to church, next time especially if you happen to be handling the sacred vessels, the books and so on, remember that they need to be treated with respect and care because they are dedicated to God. And also, again, with our sacramentals, like the rosaries, treat them with somewhat respect, because they are dedicated objects to God to help us in our worship and prayer of God. So anyways, that's all I have for today. Thank you for watching. Please let me know what you think of my live streams. Leave comments, leave questions, things you'd like you have me answer. One thing I've been doing, I should mention, because I made this decision over the weekend since my last live stream, is I've been doing a bulletin article. I've been doing it for about a month or so. I started with some budget issues, and I've decided, I need to keep. I've been wanting to do this. I have the opportunity now. So every week, I do a article in the bulletin, about a page, a little bit more, and I've been posting those. I posted the last 2 weeks, so 2 weekends ago and last weekends, I posted them to my blog, frcorey.org, fathercorey.org. Check them out, talking about the message the recent message that was given to Sister Agnes at Our Lady of Akita. She was the visionary who saw Our Lady of Akita. Go check it out. I think, whether or not that message is the real thing or not, whether or not it's an actual message from an angel to her or something else that was made up, a false message, or the false vision, anyways, the message itself is legitimate, in my opinion. What that angel had to say is absolutely legitimate. Um, we need to be praying. We need to be doing penance. We need to sacrifice. That's what the message was, basically prayer, penance, and sacrifice, which has always been the message of Our Lady. Look all the way back to Lourdes, Fatima. Look at the Divine Mercy message. Same thing: prayer, penance, sacrifice. So we need to be doing that. So, anyways, I've been posting those bulletin articles to my blog. We're talking about that, starting with what was the message. And then this last week, I talked about prayer. This week, I'll talk about penance. Week following, I'll talk about sacrifice. And then we'll see where I go from there. But anyways, check it out, fathercorey.org, frcorey.org. Yeah, and find me on Facebook, find me on YouTube here, and let me know what you think. Thanks for watching, and God bless.